How can the Cardinals pull off the upset over the Hurricanes? Well, we will lay out the blueprint. You're locked on Louisville.
You are Locked On Louisville, your daily podcast on the Louisville Cardinals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Card Nation, what's going on, everyone? And welcome into this Friday game day edition of the Locked On Louisville podcast. I'm your host, Dalton Pence. This is my 6th year covering U of L, 4th year hosting this show. And I want to take the time to thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. Just a reminder, Locked On Louisville free and available on all streaming services, 5 days a week, your team every day. Don't forget to leave a comment in the YouTube section below, because as you all know, that's a great way to help the show continue to grow. It is much appreciated. But on the show today, we are laying out the blueprint for the Louisville Cardinals. How does Jeff Brohm's team pull off the upset over the number 2 ranked Miami Hurricanes on Friday night, primetime ESPN matchup at 7 o'clock down at Hard Rock Stadium? It is going to be an uphill battle. The Louisville Cardinals are double-digit underdogs. There are some things that Louisville can do to put them at least in an advantageous spot and within striking distance to be able to do the unthinkable and pull off this upset. And we will identify and discuss those throughout the show today. But first, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the app today to get started. As you all can tell, and I mentioned it in the crossover episodes yesterday, and if you watched the episode on YouTube on Tuesday when I wasn't even on camera because my camera was broken, because I might have dropped it, and I don't know if it was the sensors or if it was just the internal components of the camera, but I had to replace the camera, and I did that, but the scope of the camera was much wider than I thought it was going to be, and it didn't look good with my regular Louisville banner / flag. So we are currently brainstorming on how to create a background. That is something that I can use permanently. But as of right now, we're going to use the virtual green screen. And look, I don't think that anybody's going to mind. There's no games being played at Cardinal Stadium this weekend, so they won't mind if I set up shop at the 50-yard line. But anyways, let's take a look at this matchup. Cardinals taking on number 2 Miami. Louisville is currently a 13.5-point underdog. I do believe that although it is improbable that they pull off this upset, it is still possible. Louisville has the talent. They've got the coach that is known for pulling off these types of upsets, but they're going to have to check off a couple of boxes. And there are some things that they haven't been able to do this year that kind of diminish the confidence that I have significantly. And the first thing is the consistency issues, or really lack thereof, of the three of the 5 games that have mattered up to this point, where we knew that Louisville was going to at least face some sort of a test and not just walk away with a victory. The Cardinals haven't put a performance on the field where I've walked away from it thinking, you know what, that was a great performance. We're almost halfway through the season, so we're kind of out of that, transition period of, hey, it's just the start of the season. Let everybody get acclimated with playing again and playing with the guys around them. I mean, we're almost halfway through the season, so can't really use that anymore. The first thing is you got to limit the mistakes. Let's look at all of the factors of pulling off these types of upsets. You go back historically over the years to how did teams pull off these caliber of upsets. One of the common denominators was playing clean, close to mistake-free football as possible. Because, well, let's back up for a second. Put that to the side just momentarily. Of the 5 games that Louisville's played up until this point, they have been the more talented team. Better team than Virginia? You can make the argument. I'm not sure that I would say that because, better teams don't make those many self-inflicting mistakes. So I do think Louisville was more talented than Virginia. I think it was not really all that up for debate, especially when you consider the expected win percentage in that game. Louisville gift-wrapped the Cavaliers 14 points. Anyways, back to this point. of the games that have been somewhat close, James Madison and Pittsburgh, you had the talent to overcome your mistakes. You had that advantage to where, you know what, you messed up, but still you could be triumphant at the end because of the talent advantage. It almost worked against Virginia. You came back and forced overtime despite gift wrapping Virginia 14 points. The point that I'm trying to make here, you don't have the talent advantage over Miami. I find it very hard to believe that you are going to be able to walk into Hard Rock Stadium on Friday night and be able to beat both yourselves and the Canes at the same time. You can't do both. Now, even if you don't beat yourselves, there's no guarantee that you're going to beat Miami, but it starts there. It starts with the turnovers, and most of them really unforced turnovers. One of the easiest ways to play yourself out of a game in which you're trying to pull off an upset is losing the turnover battle. That's something that I have circled about 10 times. Like, Louisville has to do a good job. They can't lose the turnover battle. It would be extremely encouraging if they could win it, but they, at the very most, they can't lose it, right? Like, you can't put the ball on the ground. You can't put the ball in harm's way. More on that here in the next segment when we focus on the offense specifically. But it starts with taking care of the football, not turning the ball over, especially not forcing the other team to create turnovers. Like Miller Moss going to the ground, could have taken a sack, but instead threw a pick six. The halfback pitch, which got fumbled, and the Virginia player ran it back to the end zone. The pick six against Pittsburgh. Like, Louisville's turnovers have just been loud. Not to mention penalties. Louisville is one of the most penalized teams in the country, 122nd coming into this week's games. There's only like 134 teams. Might be even less than that. Might be 132. But goes without saying, if you're constantly taking away big plays due to holding calls, or you're backing yourselves up in a series because of false starts, dare I say, committing absolutely unnecessary, inexcusable, unsportsmanlike conduct penalties after plays, or unnecessary roughness, like, you have to stay composed and disciplined in this game. If you want to have a chance at an upset, it starts with this foundation, and that foundation is not beating yourselves. Another portion of this, and this will look different in other aspects and facets of the game, you have to be able to swing the momentum in your favor. Another issue for the Cardinals this season is that they've been on the cusp of, taking over a considerable amount of momentum, all the momentum. They've had an opportunity to switch the vibe of the game, and they've hurt themselves. Virginia, they had multiple opportunities. They couldn't capitalize. Pittsburgh, first half, they had multiple opportunities. Took them a while, but they ended up capitalizing. Same with James Madison. Miami, you have to create those big momentum shifting plays, and it looks different. Maybe it's a special teams touchdown. Colin Lacey, one of the best return men in the ACC. Perhaps it is a big play from him. We saw a touchdown return on a kickoff last year from him, which put the game back within striking distance for the Cardinals. Perhaps it is a couple of big-time plays on offense, big yardage, big touchdown plays. Chris Bell, one-on-one on the outside. Colin Lacey, short reception that he turns into a big play. Isaac Brown, we've been waiting to see it for a couple of weeks now. Of course, offensive line play has been an issue, but creating those plays on offense. And then defensively, that looks like getting after Carson Beck, recording key tackles for losses. It could be a significant third down deflection, something that gets your defense off the field. Turnovers. Momentum plays look different, but you have to be able to create those plays and give yourself an opportunity to win. Crunch time arrives in the fourth quarter, you're right there and you're in a really good spot. So it starts with kind of laying that foundation, which is limiting the mistakes, something that Louisville just kind of hasn't been able to do over the first 5 games of the season. I'm hoping that they pick a great time to begin to do that in Game 6, which is the toughest test of the year against Miami. And then, of course, you have to be able to swing that momentum and create those big momentum plays. But when we come back, it's time to talk about the offense. I think most of the keys to victory or keys to pulling off this upset are surrounding the offensive side of the football. It's a part of this team that hasn't lived up to the expectations whatsoever. But, man, it would be a great time to start that. Don't go anywhere. You're Locked On Louisville, covering your team every day. It's almost the weekend. Time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order. These players delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it down. For the Louisville Cardinals against Virginia, because they just went on a bye week, Chris Bell delivered in a huge way. He had over 100 yards receiving, and he found the end zone. Despite losing, he was constantly a bright spot for this offense. And if you've watched him all season, you understand that this performance was not a fluke. And just like Chris Bell delivered for the Cardinals, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays with DoorDash Streaks. You save every time you order. Stack it up all season, and you could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period through November 18th. And also, Card Nation, I want to tell you about our friends over at SupplyHouse. When the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with SupplyHouse. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. And you best believe that I'm going to use SupplyHouse to help make this DIY backdrop project come to life. So join the free Trademaster program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use the promo code SHCollege5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. Thank you all so much for making us your first listen of the day. Just a reminder, Locked On Louisville is free and available on all streaming services 5 days a week. Your team every day. We're continuing to discuss keys to victory. What is the blueprint for the Louisville Cardinals to be able to pull off this upset against Miami? I think it's going to be a really challenging task. Louisville has the personnel to make this very interesting. They have the coaching staff to make this very interesting. But the game is played on grass. It's not played on paper, which kind of works both ways. Even though Miami is a heavy favorite on paper, any team can win on any given day. Upsets happen. Conference games can get weird, especially conference games on Friday nights. So I'm looking at this as a great opportunity for the Cardinals to be able to just make some noise and try to do whatever they can to turn their season around. So let's take a look at the offensive side of the football. It's pretty clear where we have to start. That is in the trenches. Offensive line has to be able to, if you want to say set the tone, that's fine. I think they have to be serviceable. Let's look back to that Clemson game last year. Clemson on paper had the significant advantage in that battle. The Clemson front seven was super solid last year. Louisville tried some different things that Clemson was caught off guard by, and it ended up opening rushing lanes for Isaac Brown and Duke Watson, and it gave Tyler Shuck time to throw the football. Advantage Louisville. It was a huge coaching clinic put on by Jeff Brohm and company, and a lot of that has to happen again tonight because you're going up against an incredible pass rushing duo with Ruben Bain and Akeem Messidor. And, I mean, they're 45th in the country in sacks per game at 2.45, but the pressures suggest that they are living in the opposing backfield. So the Cardinals offensive line, they have Trevante Sylvester back, which definitely helps, especially in pass pro. But Louisville's going to have to get creative, and the offensive line has to do a good job of keeping Miller Moss upright. Right now, 112th in the country in sacks allowed. That is abysmal, no matter which way you look at it. 116th in tackles for losses or tackles for loss allowed. Once again, no other way to slice it. That is absolutely horrific. So it not only applies to keeping Miller Moss upright, but you have to open up some gaps for the running backs to go through. No Duke Watson in this game. He's hurt. Keywan Brown is probable. You hope that Isaac Brown is as close to 100% as he can be, but at this point, if there are no holes to run through, it doesn't matter how healthy Isaac or Keywan are, because Miami's going to be living in the Cardinals' backfield. So this is one of those soul-searching type moments for Louisville. Like, you have to reach down deep and be able to put a solid performance on the field, at the very least, be serviceable, to where Miller Moss isn't running for his life every play, to the point to where whenever Isaac Brown touches the football, Ruben Bain is sitting right there in the backfield, ready to give him a handshake and a pat on the back. Of course, he would do more than that, but you understand. It's not just the offensive line. I think that this is also a game where Miller Moss, you got to be on your A game. We understand that you have some very high highs, but these low lows that we've been seeing, these unforced errors, these inexcusable turnovers, putting the ball in harm's way, panicking and making wrong reads or wrong decisions. We understand you've had to be Superman. It's not fair to you, but there is a portion of the blame that has to go to Miller Moss, because like we talked about, some of this isn't his fault, but he hasn't been perfect. We need to see the best version of Miller Moss if Louisville wants to be able to pull off this upset. Situational play calling has to be rock solid. I'm talking about like third and less than 5. You got to know where you are in the field. I do think you, to be able to pull off this game against a Miami team that's putting up some points, you're probably going to have to get aggressive when you're around midfield and hope that it pays off. Third and 4, third and 5, you know you're going to go for it. Got to draw up that best third down play that can get you some yards to where fourth down is more manageable. Third and 1, fourth and 1, sometimes keeping it simple is keeping it super effective. If it's third and 1, fourth and 1, Miller Moss, get up under center, tush push. If Miami stops it, credit to them. It might not look great, but if it gets the job done and moves the sticks, that is all that I care about. So situational play calling has to be good here. The whole offense has to be good. But another aspect, before we discuss the defense, Cardinals cannot sit here and play from behind. The first quarter has been the Achilles heel for this team this season, which is crazy because year one under Jeff Brohm, it was such a huge strength. Now it's done a complete 180. Louisville has not scored on their first offensive drive since, I think it was Eastern Kentucky. They went 3 and out against JMU. They went 3 and out against Bowling Green. They went 3 and out against Pittsburgh. And then Virginia, basically gave Virginia a touchdown. So they have not been good in the first quarter. You want a chance to upset Miami, you have to do what you can to get a lead. It's like I said, it feels like there's a lot that has to go right because it's true. Like, to pull off this upset, I'm not saying that like Louisville has to play the best game they've ever played to pull this off, but understand the gravity of this situation, Card Nation. Beating the number 2 team on the road, who I believe is the number 1 team. I think Miami's the best team in the country. I think that they've shown that via the eye test. I think that their resume is better than Ohio State's. I think that this is the number 1 team in the country. It's a number 1 team in the country that does have their own faults. Like, they're not a perfect team. But I think that they are a squad that you're going to have to execute to the highest degree to be able to beat them, especially at their place. Defensively speaking, this is probably the most physical team that Ron English will have to scheme up against and coach against. You've got some solid playmakers, probably the best offensive line in the ACC, a quarterback that has been there, done that, and a running back committee that I mean, it's just miserable to have to tackle for 60 minutes. So we'll discuss what the defense needs to do in order to do their part in giving the Cardinals a chance at pulling off this upset. Don't go anywhere. You're Locked On Louisville, covering your team every day. Guys, at this time, I want to tell you about our friends over at Rougiet. You've probably heard of Viagra or Cialis. Maybe you've even tried them. But if you've been looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rougiet Go Long. That's where Rougiet's Go Long comes in. This isn't just another ED pill. It's a total game changer for confidence. The effects can last up to 36 hours. That's confidence all day, all night, and even into the next day. Go Long combines 2 doctor-trusted medications in one dual-action formula so you can go the distance. Ready to level up your confidence in the bedroom? Head to rugiet.com and use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege for 15% off your first order. That's rugiet.com with the promo code LOCKEDONCollege. Make sure to use our code so they know that we've sent you. And as I mentioned throughout this week, the Cardinals are currently a 13.5-point underdog to the Miami Hurricanes tonight. Be sure to go to FanDuel to check out all of the props or the prop lines for tonight's game, the over-under, the spread as it consistently changes. And if you're new, you can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Whether you're a casual fan or love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. Cards versus Canes tonight, 7 o'clock kickoff on ESPN, primetime matchup at Hard Rock Stadium. The Louisville Cardinals handed the Hurricanes their last home loss. That was in November of 2023. I was actually in attendance for that game. It was a nice game. I would imagine that the crowd is going to be more lively with Miami being as good as they are. But defensively, sure, there have been some things that we've critiqued here and there, but I don't have much to say about Ron English's issues. Like, I think that Ron English has done fine. I think that if it wasn't for Ron English through the first 5 games, Louisville might not be 4-1. They might be 3-2. Dare I say they might be 2-3. Cardinals defense has bailed out the Cardinals offense multiple times early on this season. But once again, Jeff Brohm is going to have to rely upon his defense to bend but not break. This is a Miami offense that puts up points. They are led up front in the trenches with a great offensive line. They have a quarterback that has been there, done that with Carson Beck, and they're protecting Carson Beck. They have a running back committee that is miserable to try to tackle all game long, and they have a skill position group that has big playability. I think the defensive key to the game, the first one I should say, is being able to try to set the tone at the line of scrimmage, getting into the Miami backfield. One of the reasons why Miami's offense has been so effective is because Carson Beck just doesn't really get pressure. 85% of the times that he's dropped back, he's had a clean pocket. He's only been sacked 4 times this year. That's less than 1 sack per game. So it's going to be up to Clev Lubin, Wes Bailey, Rene Conga, Jordan Girard, and the rest of this Louisville defensive front to be able to get into the opposing backfield and make Carson Beck do what he hasn't really had to do this year, and that is escape consistent pressure. This might be the best pass rush that Miami sees for the rest of the season, but this is going to be Louisville's toughest test without a doubt from an offensive standpoint. We're going up against an opposing offense. So you have to do well in the trenches. I mentioned the running back committee, Mark Fletcher Jr., Chamar Brown, 2 guys that average, one's 5.5 yards per carry, one's 3.9, but Mark Fletcher, 6'2", 225 pounds. Chamar Brown, 5'11", 214 pounds. These are guys that don't usually go down on that first wave of contact. You have to wrap up and complete the tackle. You have to swarm to the football. More importantly, if you're able to get after Carson Beck, if you're able to set the tone at the line of scrimmage and limit big runs, you get the Hurricanes offense in 2nd and long, 3rd and long versus 2nd and 4, 2nd and 2, 3rd and 4, 3rd and 2. Like, you have to do whatever you can to get off the field by any means necessary. Like I said, bend but don't break. Field goals over touchdowns. You would trade those any day of the week. And then limit big plays, right? The Miami Hurricanes have a couple of explosive pass catchers. It starts with true freshman Malachi Toney. He has been one of the more dynamic players in the ACC, 375 receiving yards. He leads the team in receiving yards. He's got 3 receiving touchdowns, averaging 12.9 yards per reception. CJ Daniels, 23 catches, 269 yards, and 5 touchdowns. 6'2" senior that transferred in from LSU last season. He has had a resurgent season in Mario Cristobal's offense. So, and those aren't the only 2 guys, right? Keelan Marion, Elijah Lofton, the tight end. Like, they've got some other pass catchers, but it comes into play here that Louisville has to put together one of those performances that we've been used to seeing this year. Limiting the big plays. Getting Miami in 2nd and long, 3rd and long situations. How do you do that? You set the tone at the line of scrimmage. You defend the run efficiently, and you put pressure on Carson Beck, and you do your best to get him to force or to make turnovers. My apologies. And you capitalize on Miami's penalties. Miami, like Louisville, has had an issue with just absolutely or committing absolutely inexcusable penalties. So if they commit penalties, take advantage of it. So if I'm sounding like a lot has to go right for Louisville to win this game, it's because a lot does have to go right for the Cardinals to win this game. This would be a monumental type of an upset, one of the best wins in program history, a win that makes your season outlook do a complete 180. Big game Brohm. Is that the team that's going to show up tonight? Only one way to find out. And, of course, we will react to the result and what happens on the field down in Miami on Friday night later on this weekend. But that is going to wrap up this Friday edition of the show. Don't forget, be sure to hit that like and subscribe on YouTube. And if you are on this app, give us a follow on TikTok. Locked on Louisville TikTok page is live, so be sure to check that out. But appreciate you all for tuning in this week. A lot of great basketball stuff to talk about and an exciting football matchup against Miami. But everyone have a great weekend. I hope it starts out well with a statement victory on Friday. Go Cards. We'll talk to you soon.